Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this special transmission on PTV World. My name is Umar Khalid and we are discussing, as we have been since the last few days, on the Pahalgam false flag operation and all that has ensued afterwards, whether it be the Indian media disinformation, whether it be the hegemonic designs that have been made more apparent by the Indian government and its different machinations, whether it be the reactions from the different countries across the world that has been very muted, because this is what India wanted. They wanted some kind of a very strong reaction from the foreign powers that be, and none of that has come from them, because they also, as the New York Times has published, understand what the reality of the things are, also, although they are not quite blunt in saying about this, but they are asking for proof, and India has no proof whatsoever of Pakistan's involvement in the Pahalgam false flag operation, and that is why it is for the moment, trying to malign Pakistan directly and indirectly, whether it be through media, whether it be through disallowing any Pakistani analysts to come in the Indian shows, whether it be on so many other fronts, whether it be on Muslims in the Indian held valley or elsewhere who are being persecuted as a result of that, the number of arrests that have been made in the Indian held valley, and the list goes on and on. We could, I could just in my introduction go on for 20 minutes, but we have lots of guests and lots of important topics to discuss with you. So without further ado, let me introduce my guests who are here for the moment in this transmission. We will be joined by many other guests during this 2-hour marathon transmission. On my right, my first guest is Muhammad Umar. He's a security analyst. Umar, thank you very much to have joined us.
Thank you.
We are also being joined by Air Marshal retired Shahid Akhtar Alvi, who's a senior analyst online. Thank you very much, sir, to have given us the time. And of course, we will be looking forward to your input as far as these things are concerned. I'll begin with you, Umar. How credible, for example, is India's narrative? There was an article that came out in one of the Indian journals that shows a video of zipline operator, and he is in the same area, and there's a man who is filming it all, and we start hearing the firing, and that zipline operator shouts Allahu, which is very normal. Anything, any issue, anything happen, we always say Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah. Could this be, but Indian narrative has been built around this, and this zipline operator has now been arrested. This is just one of the many episodes. Don't you feel this could be a deliberate attempt to manufacture Islamist symbolism for propaganda purposes?
Thank you for having me, Umar. Umar, absolutely, it is not credible at all. If you saw the footage that came out, Muslim Kashmiris were rushing to the aid of their Hindu, Indian tourists that were there. More Muslim Kashmiris saved lives, and as you saw, the narrative that's being built in the media, it's not just about Kashmiri, it's not just about Muslims in Kashmir, it's about overall Muslims in India. They are under threat of this Hindutva extremism, of this ideology, and you saw that play out during this attack. And you currently see it playing out on social media, on their television networks, and we just have to remain vigilant. We just have to stay focused on the facts and not get too emotional. We should not get provoked by what they're saying.
But this is what they want. They want to provoke. They want to provoke the world. They want them to have a very strong reaction to that, when there is no basic basis to it.
Absolutely zero basis.
All right, sir. I'd like to understand. There was a timely downing of an Indian quadcopter near the line of control. How does this demonstrate Pakistan's military readiness in the face of the rising Indian provocations after this Pahalgam false flag operation?
I think this shows the extreme readiness of our armed forces, whether it's Air Force or Army. And this is just a small demonstration of that. And it sends a very clear signal that we are prepared. We were prepared in 2019 also, and we were prepared earlier also. So any misadventure by them would cost them very heavily.
In your opinion, sir, how does India's increasing reliance on surveillance tactics along the line of control suggest about its broader or border strategy rather towards Pakistan following such false flag operations?
Actually, Indian reliance on these technologies dates back to almost 20 years when they started acquiring Israeli equipment to install in the Kashmir. Actually, what India got from Israel, I think, is the way they were treating Palestinian Muslims. And They thought that it's a very good pattern, it's a very good example to follow, and that's how they initially in those days they employed man portable radars, and then they asked for the Israeli experts, and they were seen in Jammu and Kashmir in those time. So they are relying on these, you know, instruments or all these things, which is a part of a, a modern day technology. So there's nothing as such surprising in that. But the actual thing is that when they will employ their platforms. So that's would be very interesting, and that's what I would like to speak later on in this show.
How do you see the operational readiness of our armed forces in the wake of such false flag operations, and also the induction of the J-10C and the JF-17 Block 3 jets? How does these jets also from the Chinese side increase Pakistan's capability as far as the airspace is concerned?
Well, before I talk about Pakistan's capability in terms of men and material, let me remind the audience that perhaps Indian Air Force as a whole, and in particular their pilots, are burdened with the experiences of the past wars. We have seen 65, we have seen the performance in 71, and the pattern continued. Even in 2019, Swift retort, I was part of that team when it was planned. So we have seen that how a small air force, by a better training and with better morale, has outperformed a much larger air force every time.
All right, sir. But now I would also like to have your point of view as far as the induction of this J-10C, JF-17 Block 3 jets. And of course, also now I'll include, now that we are talking about Pakistan's airspace or Air Force capabilities, the PL-15 Beyond Visual Range missiles. How that have been also acquired by Pakistan. How do these increase not only Pakistan's preparedness but also Pakistan's response strategy to any incident that could emanate from India?
Well, uh, although one should never make a mistake of considering adversary as inferior, but let me add that the Pakistan Air Force, by virtue of a better training, apart from these platforms, I will talk about that. By virtue of its better training and a spiritual element that we carry, I think our Air Force and by and large our armed forces have become an example for the world. Now, coming back to the specific platform that you mentioned, but before that, let me remind you that almost every year, or at least every Indian Air Force chief, since the last 20 years, at least I know, have been complaining openly in the media that they are short of aircraft, they're short of equipment, and they have, kind of a obsolete equipment, or they have a maintenance issues, or their spare parts are not coming. Well, you must have never heard any such thing in Pakistan media coming from our air chiefs, for a simple reason that our leaders and our Air Force commanders have always been aware of the fact that the future wars largely depend on the aerial aspect. So we have always, prepared for that. We have largely uh, depended on self-reliance. We have been manufacturing aircraft. We have been manufacturing their parts, the radar systems, the drones, and a lot of such things, which is an open thing. And we have been selling these things also in the market. So now with the acquisition of especially J10s and advanced version of F-16, and in particular, as you mentioned, PL-15. So for the consumption of, our audience, I would say that PL-15 gives us a longer stay. In a layman term, which means that our BVR, our Beyond Visual Range missile, has a longer range than the enemy missiles, which means when the two aircraft face each other, they have to turn back. Because if they don't do that, they will face a strike on their forehead. So plus we have long range, very accurate bombs apart from these PVR, and most of all, we have, alhamdulillah, a very, very tough and very superior form of a training, which is, you know, devised by our combat commanders. Now we call it an ACE center in. So all this makes us one of such air forces, which I think enemy should take it very, very seriously. Otherwise, the Balakot experience can be repeated.
Exactly, and of course, this should be a reminder for the Indian side as well. Before I go to my guest in the studio, I have one last question to you, but I'd like you to stay during the entirety of the show. How effective, in your point of view, is Pakistan's air defense grid, particularly the high to medium altitude air defense system, otherwise known as the HIMADS, in responding to potential aerial threats?
Well, we have an adequate coverage towards the threat side. That's what I will say. I will not go into the specification of those systems, that how far they can see or what is their capability, but I would like to assure you that we have multiple platforms. We don't only, we just do not rely on the ground-based radar. I mean, we have other aerial platforms as well. And similarly, the enemy has those things. So, it makes an intrusion of enemy aircraft definitely a difficult proposition.
All right, so kindly stay online with us while I go to my studio in the guest. Umar, thank you again to have stayed from all this time. From a foreign policy standout, how do you interpret India's emphasis on any small thing that happens within the Muslim perspective, whether it be the Indian held value of this Allah Akbar that we talked about, or the small incidents? Do you feel these are attempts to frame the Pahalgam incident within a broader Islamist terror narrative to gain international sympathy and deflect scrutiny?
Absolutely, yeah, that's what this is about, Umar. They want to spread this broader narrative, which is anti-Muslim. And again, it goes back to, it relates to their Hindutva extremist ideology and mentality that has been gaining momentum since the BJP government was first elected. And you've seen this voice echoed in their media, in their traditional media, in their social media. They're conducting, if you look at this from the lens of psychological warfare, from music videos to celebrities endorsing their military and all these other memes.
And the films, the television series that come out that portrayed totally different perspective of the truth, even the previous false flag operations, and even what happened in 2019. And look how Abhinandan was declared a war hero, and he was adorned with all these medals and everything. And things were made on him, which was all based on falsehood at the end of the day.
Correct. Yes, it was.
All right, how should Pakistan, in your point of view, respond diplomatically to this rise of openly anti-Muslim hatred, whether it be in the media, whether it be elsewhere, and the collapse of secularism? And this is something I really need to highlight. Collapse of secularism in India following this operation.
So, Umar, two topics there. Most to your viewers, what India is currently doing, the mass arrests of over 1,000 Kashmiris, violates not only international law, but the Geneva Conventions that govern occupied territories. So Pakistan has one legal aspect, the one legal way it can take this is raise these concerns, document everything, raise these concerns at the UN, raise these concerns with the human rights organizations that exist internationally, as well as highlight the violation of the Geneva Conventions as it applies to the occupied territories. As to your second part, the secular curtain being lifted away, if you saw our National Security Council's response, we responded without escalation. We had a defensive posture. We showed that we want peace. But one thing that we did not do, we provided exemptions for Sikh pilgrims that are traveling in Pakistan and staying in Pakistan.
No such exemption was given from the Indian side.
No such exemption was given from the Indian side. No, there was no consideration for the human bond. As you know, because of our shared history, there are many, many Pakistanis who have families in India that regularly visit. We have marriages between people along the border. India did not take any consideration, forget the religious aspect of it, but even the human aspect of it. And they said everybody must leave by this date. So this is becoming more and more clear to the international community as well, their own behaviors.
All right. The behaviors of the Indian community and the behaviors of the Indian media is quite apparent post the Pahalgam false flag operation. Let's watch a little video of how the Indian media perceives the Muslims.
इस हमले से एक बड़ा सवाल तो जरूर खड़ा हो रहा है कि क्या किसी प्लानिंग के तहत बीते कुछ सालों में हिंदुओं को लगातार टारगेट किया जा रहा है।
अमीश का एजेंडा पूरा सेट था। जागो हिंदू जागो।
आपने क्या देखा और किस तरह से आतंकी आए, वो हिंदुओं को चिन्हित कर रहे थे, क्या कर रहे थे एग्जैक्टली बताइए।
अनफॉर्चुनेटली आई विटनेस ने थोड़ा रायता फैला दिया।
जो लोग वहाँ लोकल थे, खासकर घोड़े वाले थे या जिनकी गाड़ियां थी, वो लोगों को निकालने में बहुत हेल्प किए, लोगों को निकालने में बहुत हेल्प किए। सारे घोड़े वाले,
मैं पूछा हूँ आतंकी क्या बोल रहे थे और क्या कर रहे थे, वो तो
सारे घोड़े वाले
नहीं, वो तो आपने देखा, ठीक है भाई, वो सब ठीक है, लेकिन हिंदुओं वाले एंगल पे थोड़ा बताइए ना। हिंदू वाला जो करा हिंदुओं के साथ, उस पे थोड़ा बताइए। लोकल्स अच्छे होंगे, हेल्प किया होगा, छोड़िए वो सब। लेट्स गेट टू द एजेंडा, लेट्स गेट टू द एजेंडा।
वहाँ के होटल वाले, गाड़ी वाले, घोड़े वाले, जितने लोग थे, वो सब लोग अपने जान का परवाह नहीं कर रहे थे। हम लोग को हिम्मत दे रहे थे कि कोई गोली चलेगी भैया तो पहले हमको लगेगी तो आपको लगेगी, आप निश्चिंत रहिए।
The eyewitness just couldn't stop praising the locals, and that was making Amish very uncomfortable.
फिर हम जिस होटल में थे वहाँ भी लोग आए, फौज के लोग आए, लोग सर्चिंग कर रहे थे। फिर वहाँ होटल वाले कोऑपरेट कर रहे थे। वो ड्राइवर रात भर हमारे साथ बैठा रह गया कि भैया हम आपको छोड़ के नहीं जाएंगे, आपका क्या डिसीजन होता है। तो मैं टूर कैंसिल किया और हम वापस अभी दिल्ली पहुंचे हैं।
अब आप दिल्ली पहुंच गए हैं, बहुत अच्छा, बहुत शुक्रिया नफरत नहीं फैलाने के लिए। आपका मेरे शो में कोई काम नहीं है।
I mean, all I can say is what a sarcastic way of interpreting things and things that are totally based on falsehood. The way the Indian media has been, promoting this narrative or has been warmongering since the Pahalgam false flag operation is, ridiculous to say the least. I mean, this is what the words I can use, at least on state media. Amish Devgan, and you know how he's been attempting to spread propaganda regarding this attack in this program that you just saw, and how the lady was also trying to decipher that in another way whatsoever, and he only was asking a tourist present at the site, what did you see, how were the attackers targeting Hindus. The tourist was replying, the local Kashmiris who were there helped transport the injured and victims to safety. So of course he was not getting what he wanted, in fact. The fact is that the Indian media has always had a very decisive slant when it comes to Pakistan. It uses, as the BJP in India has been using, the Pakistan card whenever it deems suitable. I would like to ask Air Marshal retired Shahid Akhtar Alvi, I hope you're still with us, sir. I'd like to understand this Indian religious extremism and how it is being propagated through the media and elsewhere through the different politicians that are spewing hatred against Pakistan, and the deliberate attempt to portray a narrative against Muslims or against countries such as Pakistan. How do you view it as an analyst, and how are you seeing the Pakistani response to it as well?
Yeah, but before that, let me share with my viewers a very, my stay when I was in India. I would like you to recall February 2007 when Samjhota train was targeted. 68 people died. And initially it was blamed on LET by the Indian media. And those charred bodies we collected. And then in 7:30, we sent the injured to Pakistan. And interestingly, the Indian media, as usual, started blaming LET. But when Indian National Investigation Agency, they investigated, they found out Colonel Purohit, because he used military RDX in this, and Sunil Joshi, and if I can recall, Savami. So they charged them with this. And then after that, again in 2006, Malegaon, again, attack on the Muslims, and then in Makki Masjid 2007, and then Ajmer Dargah. I mean, I'm a witness to all these things which were happening over there. And not only it was just on Muslims, then in 2007, December and January 2008, there were 400 churches were burned in Chhattisgarh and Odisha. And around 20,000 Christians were forced to fled from these cities and to take refuge in the jungles. And interestingly, what national investigation agencies framed the charge? It said it's an ideological terrorism from radical Hindu elements. Now, coming back to Indian media, I think Indian media has become a Frankenstein, which has gone out of the hand of BJP and RSS also, which nurtured them. And now they have forced BJP government into a corner and are forcing them to some reaction. And I think this jingoism will cost India very heavy, and the burden lies on Indian media mostly.
The burden lies on Indian media. Umar, when you look at India and Indian media, and also the reaction by the Indian people, the burning of Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Palestinian flags in India very, very recently, indicates this broader regional and religious hostility that is being encouraged under this Hindutva-led ideology and government. To what extent can this go to, and what could be the repercussions?
Umar, the repercussions are very serious. If I were the Indian government looking at what the Indian media is doing, I would be scared because it's going to create internal rife. As Air Marshal Alvi just stated, all of the incidents that have taken place during what he's seen since 2007, that internal strife and what you see, what happened in the Kashmir Valley, all of these internal elements are going to start coming over the border. And once they start coming over, like you've seen, just this attack, immediately Pakistan was assigned blame within 5 minutes. No investigation took place. If we were not a saner, if the sanity of this government and this military is excellent, because any other government or any other military might have been provoked into an escalation. Our side, we stayed calm. We said, okay, let's do an investigation. Our prime minister, every leader in this country has been asking for those investigations. And if the government in India does not control its media, and if this type of narrative continues to happen, we will see more and more internal conflict within India. And that conflict may spill over into Pakistan and the region broadly. And that is very dangerous.
That is very dangerous, because the fact is also that there is an internal reaction within the Indian public and also within the Indian media on the Hindutva policies or the BJP or the Modi-led policies. Let's watch one of the Indian journalists talking exactly about that.
एक फोन कॉल से दूसरे देशों की वॉर रुकवाने वाले पॉपा अपने देश में आतंकवादी हमला नहीं रुकवा पाए, और अंधभक्त मुझसे कह रहे हैं कि ऐसी बातों पर राजनीति और सवाल मत करो। तो किस बात पर सवाल करूं? शिक्षा पर, जिसे मुद्दा ही नहीं समझा जाता, या स्वास्थ्य पर, जिस पर सवाल करना अब आउट ऑफ फैशन हो गया है? बोलो किस पर सवाल करूं? बेरोजगारी पर, जिसके जवाब में तुम्हारे अब्बा हुजूर पकौड़ा तलने की सलाह देते हैं? अरे जब देश की राजनीति ही राष्ट्रवाद और हिंदू मुसलमान के मुद्दे पर चल रही है, उसके बाद भी आतंकी हमलों में देशवासी मारे जा रहे हैं, तो सवाल किस मुद्दे पर करूं? 56 इंच की छाती पर देश के सारे मुद्दों को समेट देने वाले मोदी जी की सरकार में आतंकवादी हमले होंगे और नागरिकों की हत्या होगी, तो सवाल क्या मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना और नेहरू जी से पूछा जाएगा? नागरिकों की मौत और आतंकवादी हमलों पर सवाल क्यों नहीं पूछा जाना चाहिए भाई? इन सवालों से इतना डर क्यों रहे हैं आप? अपनी ही सरकार में हुए पुलवामा आतंकी हमले के शहीदों की मौत पर बेशर्मी से वोट मांगने वाला ये आदमी पहलगाम के पर्यटकों की मौत पर भी वोट मांगेगा, और अंधभक्त इसे मास्टर स्ट्रोक बताकर वोट भी देंगे। लेकिन इनका कहना है कि सवाल नहीं पूछा जाना चाहिए। बस 2-4 दिनों की बात और है, भक्तों के पॉपा पहलगाम आतंकी हमले पर रोते हुए बिहार चुनाव की नींव डालते दिखेंगे, और अंधभक्त वो बिहार चुनाव में रोते हुए ढोंगी जी की रील शेयर करते।
We've just seen one of these Indian journalists, and I think there's another reaction. There's one reaction that we are seeing quite apparent in the Indian media and within the Indian public as well. But there's also this reaction that is coming from within the Indian media as well as the the different Muslims within India and in Indian legally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Air Marshal Saab, I'd like to understand what risks to such systematic anti-Muslim hate campaigns pose to regional stability, especially when India is trying to externalize its internal failures onto Pakistan?
Well, before that, I was just listening to your news at, I think, 4 p.m. and you said that Pakistani anchors are not allowed to come on the Indian TV channels. But let me tell my viewers that since 1999, it's been 26 years, Pakistani channels are not allowed to be aired in the India. Recently, like you said, they have stopped the anchors also from doing that. But, behind all that, we have to see which are the forces who are doing that. Perhaps I would say that Mr. Ajit Doval and Mr. Amit Shah are two such people who will be recalled in history as two people who shattered or destroyed the dream of modern India, because they are the one who are behind this hate campaign. I mean, in India, while on one hand we see this kind of a media, on the other hand, the moderate voices, they are just silenced. And uh, I think these people will be remembered like Himmler or Heydrich of Nazi Germany, what they did. And the effects of these things, they will have regional implications. This hate wave will start to travel elsewhere also. Recently, we have seen that after the revolution in Bangladesh, how the Indian media turned against Bangladesh. They have enemies all around. Their hate campaign spreads all over, from Bangladesh towards Pakistan. And, and we have seen that in this Gaza war, they were totally with Israel. So that exposes that for their, you know, the, the petty politics or benefits, for them, the morality or higher principles, they, they have no value at all.
I agree. I agree with you on what you were trying to say. Umar, coming to you, how does this banning, as also Marshal Sahab alluded to, of Pakistani analysts and journalists from Indian media platform reflect the Indian fear that it has always had of being exposed internationally, particularly after this false flag operation?
Umar, again, I want to be very clear that it's the Indian media and the government that we're talking about, because as you've seen and you just pointed out, the Indian citizen, their voices are being suppressed by this media.
True.
This is what I'm talking. When I talk about internal conflicts, I'm not just talking about the continuous targeting of religious minorities, the Christians, the Muslims, the Jews. I'm also talking about civil unrest because you are suppressing your own citizens' voices. You don't do that in a democracy. You don't do that in a secular nation. And this is spilling over. It's having that spillover effect, and it's very, very dangerous.
But Umar, I also asked a question to Marshal Sahab, but he didn't respond. What risks do these anti-Muslim systemic hate campaigns pose to regional stability, particularly when India is trying to, put everything, the burden of everything that is happening onto Pakistan, externalize everything to this country?
Umar, they're trying to provoke us. They're trying to use this as a preface to start a war, and we're just not giving them the space to do it. So if this continues, you're absolutely right. There is a chance that things in this region could be destabilized if Pakistan continues to get provoked, if other regional actors get involved in this as well. But we're not there yet. We've responded very responsibly, despite their ongoing provocations in the media and by their politicians.
All right. Coming to you, Air Marshal Saab, in your view, how can Pakistan's media, diplomatic corps, and also all the diplomats that are present all across the world work together to counter India's disinformation tactic and also promote Pakistan's narrative more effectively?
Actually, we don't have to counter their narrative for the simple reason that world is not buying that. And why world is not buying that? Because they have not produced any evidence. And on top of that, Pakistan has offered them for an investigation. And even we have offered them a neutral investigation, that bring any neutral countries into this and let's do the investigation. What more can we do? So I think already on a diplomatic front, we are conveying our message to our friends and all across the world. And just saying this, that
Our conversation, we have to go to a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and we were in conversation with Air Marshal retired Syed Akhtar Alvi Sahab. Sir, you were saying
that on a diplomatic front, I think we should remind the world about Indian history, especially, about the statement by Mr. Ajit Doval when he said what he said about Balochistan, that how they will actively, flame this, whatever the terrorism is being taking place over there. So those statements are in front of us. We have already submitted a folder full of evidence. We have Kulbhushan Yadav with us. So, and on top of that, I was saying that we have asked for the open investigation. So what else Pakistan can do? So I think diplomatically we should convey these messages, and most importantly, we should convey the message that we are a responsible country who does not want to get into a war just based on the allegation that 25 tourists were killed in India. We have suffered a loss of 60,000 people in Pakistan. Indian Hell Kashmir suffered a loss of 40,000 people, apart from maybe 20,000 rapes. But even on those accounts, Pakistan has never gone and, to an extent that we say that we will declare a war against India on these fabricated charges, which India has just made. So I think overall we should give this message: we are a peace-loving nation. We do not want these confrontation, which is actually a right way. And let's hold an open investigation and see into this. We should not get into this trap, as Omar has just said.
All right. Also, I'd like to understand here, Marshal Saab, coming to you, considering this aggressive posturing, how important is it for Pakistan not only maintain deterrence but also narrative control internationally? And do you have some suggestions regarding that?
Yeah, actually, narrative control. Well, India is burdened with this narrative control thing because they are fabricating a statement which looks like a false flag operation. Pakistan doesn't have to build that narrative. Our position is already very clear, and that's why the world has not bought the Indian narrative so far. So if Indian narrative has not been accepted by the world, that means Pakistan narrative has been accepted, and which is very fair. Now coming to the deterrence, well, this deterrence is already being maintained by the forces, which not generally is known to the people in the country, but the forces on both sides, they know what kind of measures the other force has taken. And I would like to assure you that on that account, rest assured that all the measures must have been taken by all the armed forces of the country. And I think they are sufficient to give a clear message to the enemy. They have anyway a past record also. Still they want to get into a misadventure. It will cost them very heavily. It will cost everyone heavily, actually. So that is why we are asking and the sane voices in India to reassert themselves, because the moderate voices in India, unfortunately, they're dying down under the pressure of the RSS, I would say, if not BJP. Thank you.
Exactly, and that is what they have been doing. They've been trying to exert pressure in any way possible, in any manner possible as well. We have also been joined in the studios by Dr. Munawar Hussain. He's a senior analyst. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, there are responses that are coming. We've discussed earlier in the show before your arrival about the reaction that is coming from within India as well. There are certain Indian journalists who are openly questioning the sensibilities or lack thereof of the Indian government and the Indian hegemonic designs, and also from amongst the people, but also amongst the politicians. How do you view former Indian Minister Saifuddin's warning that any diversion of Pakistani water by India could trigger an open war, especially amid heightened tensions following this false flag operation?
I understand that we need to have an insight regarding the policy behavior of India under the regime of Prime Minister Modi. And as far as my understanding is concerned, there are three major sources which are shaping up the external and internal behavior of India under Modi. Number one is the superstructure, and that superstructure is given by neo-Marxist, in which your ideology and belief system plays a vital role in shaping up your behavior. As per their belief system, they are the son of the soil. They have a right to rule over this whole land of the subcontinent. They have a right to exploit the resources, and all others, they are inferior, so they have to be either eliminated or expelled from this area. Number one, this. And this was the same mentality of Hitler, by the way, because Hitler believed, and he has mentioned in his book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, that we are the Tento race, Marshal race, and we have right to rule over the world. So similar mentality you find, and because of this mentality, we know that Gandhi was killed by these elements because of their belief system, even they did not spare their founding father. Second important source is their strategic mindset. And this strategic mindset has roots in two very important philosophies. Number one, Niccolo Machiavelli, Italian philosopher, first political thinker. Another is Kautilya, who was the prime minister of Chandragupta. Because this Chanakya Kautilya, he believed in cunning diplomacy. And if you see Indian diplomacy, you would find the element of cunning in that. Manipulation, manipulating the facts and the situation and the espionage. I mean, their naval forces personals, they were caught in Qatar because of the espionage activities. Second, if you see Niccolo Machiavelli, he also believed in deceit and ruthless use of power to be in a power. Third important source is internal politics. And in internal politics, they have a fear that they would be overthrown because there are large minorities like Muslims. They are about 200 million, and the Sikh minority. And that is the reason that they want to prosecute them, to ridicule them. And if you see number of steps that they have taken, for instance, Waqf bill, the purpose of this Waqf bill is to capture 9.4 lakh acre land of the Muslim different organizations. Similarly, agricultural taxes on Sikh community, 35A and 370. These are number of other steps that they have taken. What happened in Gujarat because of this? Why they are doing this? Because of three important, rather four important political their objectives. Number one is political end, to gain support in Indian uneducated, marginalized people, like now election is going on in Bihar. Number two, to divert the attention regarding their weaknesses, what is going on in Mizoram, Nagaland and Manipur. The second is economic end, to strangulate Pakistan, to encircle Pakistan, and therefore always they go and they have conspiracies in FATF. Diplomatically, they want to isolate Pakistan. Sometimes they said we want to have a cricket with Pakistan, and they are using propaganda in that and inflict pain to Pakistanis because they know that Pakistanis are very sensitive regarding Kashmiris. They are very sensitive regarding the Muslims.
Yes, so that is true. We will continue on this, but we have a very short last question to ask Air Marshal retired Shahid Akhtar Alvi Sahab. Sir, do you feel that India and the world, understands how ready our armed forces or our defense forces or our air force is in case of any unfortunate eventuality? And do you feel the message is quite loud and clear? What's your take? I'd like a very short answer on that.
Yeah, I think let there be no doubt that the world at large, and most importantly, Indians are very well aware that how the readiness state of our armed forces, and I think they never had any doubt about that. And so let there be no doubt. If you want a short answer, they are very clear about that. So they will not
Be no doubt.
There can't be a miscalculation based on this assumption. They will not do that. If at all they have take some misadvantage, it is based on the political pressure.
All right. Thank you very much, Air Marshal Saab. Last question to you, Umar. If you look at the Indian extrajudicial or transnational terrorism, we know the example of Canada. We see how Justin Trudeau reacted to it. We know 2023, 2024, the US Department of Justice and its different reactions as well. Does the world know and understand India's hegemonic designs when it comes to terrorism?
Absolutely. It's become very, very clear. If you remember in 2023, Justin Trudeau, who is considered a Modi fan, actually had to come out and accuse the Indian government's involvement in the murder of a Sikh separatist. In 2023, 2024, I think the exact words the Department of Justice used was transnational oppression and involvement in murder plots. So the international community, because of Pakistan's diplomatic efforts, has become and is becoming more enlightened on the reality of what is happening in India and what they're creating in this region, which is conflict, which is mistrust, which is the repression of their own people, and internal conflict, and the blame is all coming to Pakistan.
Of course, I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much, Umar, to have joined us, and thank you very much, Air Marshal retired Shahid Akhtar Alvi Saab, to have joined us for this part of the segment. You've been extremely insightful as far as all that is ensuing post this false flag operation is concerned. But our transmission continues after this news break. Stay tuned right here to PTV World.